Away we go.
And it is episode 20. I almost jumped ahead. 20, part 1, brought to you unofficially by Phil's Ice House. We have the I don't remember what it's called, Jolly Bill Burger with the fried egg on it. And more importantly, the green bean fries, which are actually really good if you haven't tried them. And we were going to start with a review and...
I got the classic Allendale. It's just a classic.
Yeah. A review and a slightly more in-depth look at the current shutdown, which is extending at least another week or two at best, and at worst, God only knows. I mean, it really looks kind of crazy how long it could go. But the two key features that people on the right seem to be ignoring, but the immediate thing that kicked in as recently as yesterday is SNAP benefits. They're not just gone. The update as of this morning is that they turned off the cards. So in other words, if you're somebody that was getting these benefits and you had a card and it had $10 left on it, $100, it doesn't matter what. If you had money left on it, you can't access it anymore. That's as Steve put it, that's crossing a line in terms of trying to punish people or whatever they think they're doing. So, and then the other point is for people who are saying, well, why don't you just blah, 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 blah. The ultimate thing that the Dems are holding on to is healthcare. And if they make the changes that they're looking at with healthcare, some of the numbers are like people's healthcare plans who are on the ACA could jump from $600 a month to $4,000 a month. And I'm not making that up. Those are the kind of numbers that we're looking at. And as I've said before, it would be one thing to say, well, it's just these people. But if it happens to those people, there are enough of those people that everybody's premiums would be going up. So you're totally screwing these people, but you're hurting everybody else too. You're like nobody's left unscathed.
Right, because less people will be going to get health care, which brings the prices. But anyways, or people who do go get health care can't pay for it. And when you can't pay for yours, they pass that cost on the other people who can. So if you have, look, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about these two subjects. See, look, we talked about this last week, right? So these are just further developments that Al came across to make it, to add insult to injury, to pour salt on a wound. And, this is all, just this kind of cruelty. And what I'm going to talk about as far as the SNAP benefits being removed from people, which is clearly just a cruel act on behalf of, this legislation, that they have this sick mentality that people don't deserve this, these benefits because there might be a very, and we know this to be true, small fraction that are abusing the system. And they always want to tout these stories about the welfare queen. And this goes back to Reagan with these lies, right? But I don't know, when I was in the AmeriCorps, I applied for food assistance, and I had to prove that I worked. So in my experience, you don't get food stamps if you don't freaking work.
But to make it even worse, I've been talking to people, and the people who are getting it, it's not that much money. It is.
Well, let me just go further. Yeah. Let me complete this thought. So this is where I'm going with this. I'm scrolling through TikTok, and a couple times I've come across, and usually it's a stitch. And one time I came across it wasn't a stitch, and somebody just going, if I had to go on food assistance, I would just work 80 hours a week, so I didn't have to do that. And here's where that individual's wrong, in just two ways, fundamentally just wrong, and a third way, just a sick, cruel person. One is, these people work. Look, there's I can't remember these numbers. I'm going to throw some numbers that are probably somewhere in the ballpark. Like 40% are children, then there's another, and then
like women, 20% are over the age of, sorry.
Then there's going to be, a good fraction that are women, single women with children. And then there's the fraction that are actually working full time, which is a good number of these people that are working at places like Walmart, McDonald's, who don't make enough to pay. And then there's another fraction who, work part-time, right? So in my understanding, there has to be some kind of work involved. And then when the more you work, the less you get. So like as Al was saying, certain individuals, if they're working, only receive a certain amount. And to get this assistance, if you're not working, you have to be disabled or have some kind of extenuating circumstance, right, involved. So there might be certain individuals, a small fraction, who are pretending not to be able to work to receive these benefits because they're disabled or they can't for some reason, or this or that or the other, right? But that's a small fraction of the people who are actually legitimately getting these because either they're working full time, right, and they don't make enough for them and their children, or it's a single woman working and she's single, and she's not making enough. And then there's people that are working part time, and there could be an argument where people will say, well, they should look for another part time job then, or get a full time job. And I also saw somebody say something like, I think you have to work a certain number of hours even.
Yeah.
But let's just say there's something like that, right? But then I also had somebody make an argument about that, saying, well, I've heard from some family member of mine who said, I'm not going to work over the 32 hours because they'll cut my benefits and it's not worth it. And that's just deplorable because they should be working. And I said, well, the question should be, why are they not paying enough to make it to your benefit to work full time? That should be the question. Yeah. The question should not be, why are you not working the 40 hours to get getting the full benefits? The question should be, why are you getting paid so little that it's to your benefit not to work and to only work 32 hours? If they're paying you less than the cost of food, that is wrong on two levels. One is food is too fucking expensive, and two, and we're getting price gouged across the board every single way. We know this to be true. This inflation is bullshit. It's price gouging, almost all of it. Secondly, and some of this inflation is caused because of this crap we're doing with with ICE. So, and then secondly, and tariffs and things. Secondly, why aren't corporations paying more money? Why aren't people getting paid more? This wouldn't even be an issue if people made more money, but you get paid so little that you can't even afford to eat. So this whole idea that these people don't deserve these, that they're somehow on a form of welfare, and that they're lazy and they don't want to work, is preposterous at face value, if you know anything about how this works or ever went on it. And for those who say, I would work more, that's the world you want to live in, that you got to work 80 hours a week to work? You want to go back to slavery then, is what you're saying. You're saying you want to be a slave and sip to billionaires. You'd rather do that than force the hand of the government to fucking pay for people who can't afford to eat. That's how ridiculous these people are. That's how ridiculous these fucking people are. That they're such simps to corporations and billionaires, and it's like they're like, beat me master. That's how ridiculous they are. I would just work 80 hours if I had to. Well, you're an idiot. That's why. You're not an idiot because you're like, hey, this is fucked up. I should make enough money if I'm working 30 hours a week to fucking eat, at least. That's insane. So yeah, this whole narrative that they're trying to make, that they're cutting these, that this aid is unnecessary because they don't, because of certain people, or they should have saved up from last month. Well, what'd you do with last month's rent?
You spent it.
You spent that. The
right.
money's gone, and when they only give you $200 a month, fuck, I go to the grocery store. It's $250, and it's for two people for a week, and it's not a lot. I don't like, and it's like. It's
like I go maybe once or twice a week, and Rosie goes once or twice a week, and every time either of us go, it's a minimum of about $150. So you add that up, and that's for 1 week. They get that amount for 1 month.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're not buying crazy expensive stuff. I mean, we're not always buying brand name, but we're usually doing turkey instead of beef and whatnot. You get my point.
Look, it's expensive out there.
Yeah.
And it's just getting worse for no reason. For no good reason.
Right.
And So there's that. So there's that right off the bat. The whole narrative, like the fact that, and then they're trying to blame the Dems for it. Here's another thing about this. They have an emergency fund for this food assistance.
They
right?
wouldn't have to do
I don't know why they call
anything
it
with
food
anybody.
stamps.
Yeah,
We haven't had food stamps since the
Right,
70s,
but
that's what
yeah.
people want to call it. And SNAP, and there's some other ones, right? But let's just call it food assistance. So, you know, it's been around for quite some time, and it's for good reason, you know, because of these corporations and shit. So anyways, what was I saying? So
the disingenuous nature of calling it a democratic shutdown.
yeah, the Democratic shutdown, right? So, and the reason and that's why they're not getting it, because the Democrats. So they want to, like, so there's a good portion of these rural Americans who use this assistance, a really high percentage, right? And they vote in a high percentage for Trump across the board, everywhere. So they're trying to frame it and tell these people that it's the Democrats' fault that you're not getting your assistance. When in fact, it's clearly the Republicans who aren't coming even to
The table,
the chamber
yeah.
to come and try to come to an agreement with this. And it's the Democrats that are trying to hold the line for these people, saying, no, you're not going to cut these benefits indefinitely. You're not going to cut health care indefinitely. You're not going to make all these cuts to social programs indefinitely with this bill that you're trying to pass. So they're lying to people once again. They're lying about the Democrats being at fault. They're lying about what's in the bill. And they're also not telling them that they have that money in reserve that's been used in the past. When we've had shutdowns so many times.
And admittedly, the money might not cover more than another month, but that's what it's there for, though.
And they can always come up with more.
Right.
There's money.
Yeah.
They can print money. Money is fake anyways. So there's all this shit's fake. I think you fucking know. People that are wise enough know that shit, right? There's plenty of food. Food's going in the fucking garbage can, right? There's plenty of food. 20-30% of our fucking food goes to waste. So there's no shortage of food here. That's the bottom line. There's no shortage of food. There's a shortage of will, and there's cruelty. That's what there is.
And then on the state level, it's getting nasty because a number of states are trying to pass things saying that they're going to at least temporarily cover the shortfall for SNAP benefits. And the feds are basically trying to turn around and say, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Right. So two things. One is they took the money. I wasn't aware of that until today. They took the money that was already in their accounts and said you can't use it.
Yep.
And now they're trying to stop states because, like I said, they want people to get angry. They want people to get angry. They want people to get angry at Dems, and they want people to get angry at Republicans. They want us to go to war. They want us to start fighting. They want us to start a war. They want to clamp down and declare martial law and shut down these elections and take over the government. That's what they want us to do. I'm pretty convinced of that. I mean, it's just heading that way. It's like everything they do is strictly to infuriate. Anybody who's dealt with a psychopath, either in your family, like a father or mother, or at work, or a boyfriend or girlfriend, this is the shit they do. They purposely instigate to cause a reaction. And then when the craziness starts, they blame you, and then they just want to get violent.
I mean, the definition of gaslighting, yeah.
Yeah, well, this is even beyond gaslighting. This is like insidious. Gaslighting is like kind of lying to somebody to make them believe something. This is just like pure. I don't even like. There's probably a term, but this is cruelty. Cruelty at a level that is just insane, and it's evil maniacal. And these people are evil maniacal. Look at Stephen Miller. He's like a cartoon villain when it comes.
He even looks like it. I mean, he really does.
And if you hear any history about this guy from anybody who ever knew him, he's been nothing but a sicko since high school. Like literally a freaking sicko, and just full of hatred and bile and contempt and just and like how a person like that could even make it in society is just a testament to this fucking country in general. Like I said, with Trump and everything else, this is the shadow self of this country coming to light, finally. And maybe it needs to, so we can get heal over this shit and get this out. But, so there's the food stamp situation, right? Now let's talk about the healthcare. So within the healthcare, there's a certain amount of, depending based on your income, of assistance that you will get, towards the the program that you choose, the healthcare that you choose through the exchange. And I go through this because I work independently, right? So, based on your income, like I said, it can be anywhere from $50 to I think up to $1,200 or $1,000 or something if you at the very low end. So if you choose something that's $600 a month, it's free. You get it for free if you get that much money. Let's say you make $20,000 and they say you're eligible for $800 or $700, and you choose something at $500, you're free. You choose something at $1,000, you pay $300. You see how this goes? Now, why it would go up to $4,000? Now I've heard up to $2,000. I haven't heard $4,000. Now, a healthcare plan going up to $2,000 seems extremely excessive to me.
But it is excessive. That's the point.
Yeah, but let me just explain this.
Okay.
So people are completely confused here. Generally, the most expensive plans through the exchange are like $1,200 a month to $1,400, right? Maybe that changed because of, like, I haven't gone in to get next year. So, and they've already told me mine's going up, and we'll see. They might not get any relief whatsoever. Mine might go up. I think mine's $1,100 a month. Right now, who knows how high it will go. But I think this is what's happening. Because they're projecting that these subsidies, right, aren't going to go through, they have to raise the rates for everyone. Because like I said, when a bunch of people start going into the hospitals with no coverage whatsoever from Medicaid or insurance, they have to take on that cost, right? So the premiums are, and then what they're going to do is, so the hospital is going to start billing more, right, for people who do get care. So when the hospital bills more, that costs the insurance company more. So they're going to raise your premiums because the hospital has to eat that cost. And then they raise the cost. Then you see how this goes. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I got it. Yeah.
So this idea of like all of a sudden healthcare costs went up to $4,000. Well, maybe it might doubled. And maybe it did. Maybe it could have went from the actual base cost.
But even if it only doubled, like you were saying.
Right. But the fact is, I think the max you could have got from assistance was $1,000 or something, or $1,100. That didn't change, or that is changing to where you don't get anything. I'm not even sure if you get anything anymore through that bill. I'm not sure how much you get, but whatever it is, it's reduced so vastly that people's premiums are probably going to go up 100%. So, for example, if you were getting the $1,000, you might be only getting $5 now. So now you got to pay double. You get my point?
Yeah.
So that's what's going on here. And because of that, the insurance companies, knowing that the hospitals are going to charge more because of the cost that they're going to have,
are already starting to raise everybody else's rates as well.
Their prices are going up, so the insurance has to pay more for the ones that they are paying for. So that's why they're thinking ahead and saying, okay, this is what we're going to end up having to pay. We're forecasting based on the information that we have that this is how much we're going to have to pay out a year. So we got to double our rates. So the aid for the Medicaid and the health plan get cut off, and the rebates get removed from the Affordable Health Care Act, and then that goes on to the hospital has to end up paying that in the end, which then the insurance, which they have to raise their rates, and the insurance company pays in the end. Now you have to pay more. That's how that works. So to blame Democrats for an increase in pay, once again, is wrong. It's flat out, and they know this. They know this. This is lying. They are lying.
But their lies are working. That's what's scary.
Right. And people are completely clueless how this works. I've heard so many different people before say so many things about the Affordable Care Act that are just completely wrong. Even people who said that they tried to get on it and couldn't. I'm like, I've been on it like 3 times in my life. Like, it's not that hard. You go in, you see the things, you read through it. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think most people can fucking navigate it pretty well. And if you don't make a lot of money, it's fucking beautiful. So, the more you make, the less, it's like, okay, if you're making $100,000 a year, you're not getting anything. But you're getting the insurance through the marketplace, though, which is slightly cheaper than if you just went outside of it, right? Because it's a marketplace. So, you might have paid $1,200, let's say, for an individual, and it might be only $9 in the marketplace for the same exact insurance, okay? But that's how, I know I went a long way, and if anybody sat through all this to get through this, I hope you understand how this works. And I know there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of things that, like, you kind of presented in a way that wasn't really quite clear. I'm not.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm glad you clarified.
But I want to clarify how this works. Exactly how it works with the. Because
it's one thing to say what we're seeing, and it's another to break it down and say, well, what's going on behind the scenes?
Why does it happen this way? And I don't think people are really clear about the why.
hopefully that helped at least somebody.
Right. I hopefully that makes an understanding so that if you do have to debate this with someone at some point, you can explain the why. Like, let me explain to you why. Will that help somebody who's brainwashed and a fool and just no longer will accept information, which is the vast majority of these clowns? Probably not. But it might get to somebody. You might get to somebody. And look, the more and more these people who are on these benefits, food assistance and healthcare, they're going to lose it if this bill goes through, which it probably will somehow. There's going to be outrage on both sides. And I don't think that these Republicans that are in these are going to be outraged at Republicans. They're going to somehow blame Democrats. They're going to be lied to, and they're going to blame Democrats. And the Democrats who know why this happened, who lose their shit, who lose their health care and their food assistance, are going to be mad at Republicans. Guess what happens when people get mad at each other?
Nothing gets done.
Nothing gets done. Violence breaks out.
Right.
Look, they're trying. Look at what happened when there was bread lines. What happened in any country, any time in history, in recent history, when there was food shortages and high inflation and things like that. There was revolts and violence and all this other stuff that they're trying to usher in on purpose. I'm convinced this is on purpose. This is completely needless. They don't have to do this. They have plenty of money for this stuff. It just seems like it's on purpose.
Yeah.
It's on purpose to be cruel and to instigate. That's the only logical explanation for any of this. None of it makes sense otherwise. If anybody else can come up for a reason of why,
because if it were anything else, they wouldn't have done what they did this morning about killing the cards themselves. If it was anything else, they would have used the surplus. If it was anything else,
they would allow the states.
You get the idea.
They would
allow the states to do what they want to try to do.
But they're not.
Right.
And the reason why is they're a bunch of cruel, vicious, mean, evil, maniacal, horrible human beings.